Excellent.
We just need to make like 20 lives and just play around with how long it takes exactly for it to show up.
Oh, have you ever gone back and watched
Yeah, sometimes.
to see if it seems to pick it up, for the replay at the beginning.
Yeah.
But for everyone else, it takes a second to kind of
Oh, really?
refresh.
Okay,
Right.
gotcha. Okay.
Like it took a second.
Cool.
So
Good morning.
here.
We're here.
Good morning.
Let's do it. Welcome to Books We've Never Read.
Except for those we have.
I'm Jason.
I'm Nicole, and this is episode 49 of Books We Never Read, and we're going to discuss Rosewater, chapters 1 through 10 by Tade Thompson.
And we're ready for it.
So ready for it.
Because we want to keep reading. I want you guys to appreciate just how hard it is for us to not keep reading for you.
That's all for you. So before we get started, please make sure that this is the video that you really mean to watch. So we talk about the section of the reading as if you have also already read it. So there are spoilers everywhere. If you're brand new, welcome to the channel. Please participate in the live chat if you're here live, or in the comments section if you are watching the replay, or if you would rather spend out your thoughts on Goodreads, then you can do that too. We have a community on Goodreads called Books We Never Read. And there's an invite link in the description box below that's good for 30 days from the airing of this video. And in each video we post, I post an updated invite link. So if you're finding the most recent video, you should always be able to join our community on Goodreads. We're also available on YouTube Music as a podcast. So if you don't want to look at our beautiful faces, you just want to listen to our beautiful voices, then that is there too.
Yep. And we got some feedback recently this week that perhaps we should start including like links to where you can buy the books in our videos, and that's a cool idea.
Yeah.
And so
that way you can make sure you find the right one.
Yeah.
So I did link to Amazon below. Okay. It's the link that takes you to the option to buy the Kindle book or the paperback copy. Like, you have a couple of options there. But we'll start adding that to the syllabus. I also posted links to Hoopla and Libby, which most of your public libraries, if you're in the US, use Libby and Hoopla, and you can get ebooks and audiobooks there for free. You already pay for them through your taxes. So it's more helpful if you go to your own library's website and try to access Hoopla and Libby from there. But if you've got your library card, you should be able to just download those apps and put your information in. And most of the books that we read are in some form there.
Yeah, we usually check that they're around.
But that doesn't mean there's not a waiting list.
Sure.
Or, sometimes we do read something pretty random.
But any feedback like that, we definitely want to hear, because we want to make this... It's been a couple weeks since we've added like the microphone. And so I really enjoy adding things to this experience. And I want it to be something that's easy and accessible for you guys. Mm-hmm. And I know that some people had trouble like getting this book, I think. Or some people are running a little behind getting it. Mom, you might be one of them. So... yeah, that's the housekeeping. Let's talk books. So, look, number one, as we're talking, I want to know what you guys are thinking so far, because this is the first book of a trilogy.
Yeah.
And we have not committed to whether or not we are going to do the second and third books. However, I think I'm interested. So, we'll see. What are you thinking so far? Well, What are your general thoughts about this book? Let's not get into like
not the
specifics yet.
nitty-gritties.
Yeah,
it's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting learning about the world.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting learning about it from the perspective of someone living in Nigeria. Yeah. There's a few things that pop up every once in a while, and you're like, "Oh yeah, we're not in America," Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's kind of cool, and. Okay, so we split our books into thirds, and usually it works out pretty perfectly where at the end of our first reading, we have really popped off that exposition and we are ready for the rising action.
Yeah.
In this book, I feel like I might have been off a chapter or so. We have like the inciting problem.
Yeah.
But we didn't really catch him, that need to like figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
And so I think we're off a little bit on our division.
Well, and we're playing with time a little bit, right? Like we're playing with the story proper happens in 2066. And we have a lot of this story, though, that's going back to like his young adulthood in like 2044, 2055. I can't remember exactly what it
Childhood.
is.
Yeah.
But, it's entirely possible that what we're seeing is sort of like the end of the action. Malara kind of tells him, like, you know who I am. I'm a friendly friend. That's like where we end, almost.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that really the action kind of has happened in his past. But let's get to that in a second, right? I want to talk about Tade Thompson for a second.
Okay.
He's a psychiatrist.
Yeah, he's a doctor.
Yeah, the dude's a doctor.
Cool.
So, like, that's what's up. But so I want to talk about. He was born in the UK, moved to Nigeria for a long time in his childhood, moved back, and that's where he lives now. Is a psychiatrist. And
Where does he live?
In
the
England.
UK.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think that the psychiatry aspect is really interesting because so much of what we're playing with is like mental constructs, and so much of the magic of this world is all mental. And one thing that I really like is sort of like very early on in the book we get this conversation about your mental construct and what people like look like in their own heads, and we've talked about that a little bit before here. And like maybe my mental construct, I still have hair. Like I don't know.
I look like Jennifer Aniston.
yeah. And he Caro decides he looks like a griffin or whatever, but not only that, but like what do you look like in other people's minds?
Right.
And sort of this self-concept idea I think is important because and now I'm like breaking my rule and I'm jumping all over the place. And I wanted to talk about very specific things, and here I go. But it appears that we're getting that with Malara as well, where her self-construct is something perhaps totally different than what she actually is.
Yeah.
But before we move on from Tade Thompson, I want to talk about the style of this book.
Okay.
It is very different, just linguistically.
Yeah.
I think from some of the other things we've read, it's very choppy. There's lots of commas, and I tend to read this book before I fall asleep. So this might be like trippy dream state thoughts. But I think, so part of it is that this is first person, but part of it is the way that he writes. It's almost more experiential than it is descriptive. Like I feel like I really enjoy this style of writing. So instead of saying, and then I realized that my heart was beating quickly, he'll just say heart beating quickly. That's it, and then continue the sentence. And there's plenty of writers who write like that, but it really adds to the drama and drawing you in because you get these experiences and not like descriptions.
It's very direct.
Yeah.
Very direct.
I'm really enjoying that.
Yeah. Like when he describes from his thievery days when he was going through like the sewage and the trash rubbish, he didn't go on and on for 5 sentences describing the smell. He said it smells like
Yeah.
and you're like, got it.
Yeah, and like it's in my nose, I can't get it out, right?
Like those simple descriptions and you connect immediately.
And it's not like Caro rubbed his nose trying to get the scent out, but nothing he would do could. I feel like we would have lost so much of this story if it had been told
like third person.
Yeah, in a third person kind of way.
Yeah. That is nice to reflect a little bit on the effect that the narrator has on the story.
And I think too that it's an important aspect of it because so much of what we're seeing Caro do is go into other people's minds. And so for us to be able to go into Caro's mind, like we are there. He is not telling us, he's not putting into our heads. This whole book is about these connections between things, and whenever he's like in the school and him and the other sensitives all kind of become one thing, we are also becoming one thing with them through the way that Tade Thompson has decided to narrate this story, and I just think it's fantastic. That's all.
Cool.
Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
No, it's great. Yeah. Becky says she'd like to move on from his past. And yeah, the back and forth of the timeline does take some getting used to.
Yeah.
At least it is very clear at the beginning of the chapter.
Yeah.
Like it'll say the year and then it'll say past.
Yeah.
Or the year current. And I appreciate that.
Well, so I mean, this is also kind of confusing. Like there are things that Caro knows that will pop into his head and therefore into our reading that he doesn't explain
Mm-hmm.
because he knows it
Mm-hmm.
and we don't know it yet.
Mm-hmm.
But so let's build the world a little bit, right? What are we looking at? What's the story here?
So in 2012,
Yep.
an alien thing landed
In
in
London.
London. And in the 2050s, it built a biodome in Rosewater, or the city of Rosewater built around that. We know that Caro
Mm-hmm.
was at that biodome
Yep.
at its beginning stages
Yes.
and waited for it to open.
Uh-huh.
And he kept circling it and circling it and circling it.
Yeah.
And the first time it opened, they noticed there were some
Like the healings.
changes. Yeah.
But there's a reference also that he has been in the biodome.
He has been in the
That's
biodome.
like in the first chapter or two, and we've never talked about it.
Right.
Yeah.
And his girlfriend's brother,
Yes.
or whoever that chained up kid is,
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a second. Sketch.
has video footage of him being there
At the beginning.
at the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay. So I know the whole thing about London or whatever, but like, we're told that it's like a highly intelligent being that like crashed into London. How did it make something in Africa? Like, does it explain that part and I missed it, or?
I
No?
think it just said, wow, I like the weather here.
Aren't there maybe different, what do they call it? Utopia City, right? Aren't there like different things of this, like maybe like all over the world?
I don't know.
Okay, I can't remember. I feel like they might have mentioned that because there's also this like weird thing about like America is gone.
Yeah, and there's like American refugees everywhere.
Yeah, because it's gone.
Yeah, so
And,
what
and
happened?
so like, and that might not be tied into the alien at all, right?
That alien
Or
was just
whatever this thing is. You're just like, don't need those guys.
Ah.
Fair enough. Okay, but so this thing, and then it grows this city. We have no indication at all of what the thing in London's motives are. We have no indication at all what the thing in Rosewater's motives are. And we're kind of given to believe that this opening that happens once a year is really just kind of like its exhaust. Right? Like I don't think we're supposed to think
Just letting out a good year-long fart.
Yeah, I don't think we're supposed to believe that it's
It's not trying to heal people.
No, it's just a byproduct that people have then figured out. Like, hey, if we hang out by this like city sphincter thing, then like we get healed because it's not all benevolent, right? People get healed in weird ways. We have the reanimates and all that, right?
Yeah,
Which are like
that's
just
creepy.
zombies. Yeah, it's cool.
I don't like it.
Yeah. Well, and the whole thing is a fungus.
Right. And it's
And I'm
releasing
into
all
that.
these spores.
Yeah, I'm into the fungus thing. I think that's really cool. We had this a little bit, I think, in Children of Time, where they had a problem with a disease
Yeah.
where the fungus would make the spiders crawl all the way to the trees and make them act differently, right?
Yeah.
But like cordyceps zombies is not like a strange idea. That's what The Last of Us is about. And so it's not like a unique idea, but it's a fascinating one because it's probably more realistic than anything else.
It's gross.
Yeah.
Star Trek Discovery, the newer Star Trek series, also works a lot with fungi. They use the mycelial network
Yes.
to travel and all that.
Yeah, interesting. And so you can cut yourself off from the so the xenosphere just seems to be the communication between the spores, right? It's really a fungus thing that belongs to whatever this alien thing is that some humans are able to tap into. It reminds me kind of Avatar, how like everything on the planet is connected in some way.
I love that he was rubbing that Guinness-all or whatever all over him.
You can rub the antifungal on you, and or you can build a house like Amanat's parents' house.
Yeah. Why did they build a house to disconnect them from the network?
It's for the boy. We'll get to that in a second. We have some interesting questions.
Yes.
Though,
Okay. So, if you knew where money or jewelry was and you knew you could take it, would you?
And I knew I could take it. Like I knew I could get away
Just
with
like Caro.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, I think my decision making would probably be like Caro and try to figure out like, can the person afford to have it missing or whatever. Definitely,
Once he adjusted his
definitely if I was
priorities.
his age. If I was now, I'd probably find some kind of way to just make it work for me better. There's probably more efficient ways to use your power.
I would be like, hey, I'm really good at finding stuff. Did you lose your keys? Pay me.
Yeah.
You know, $500 and I'll find the keys.
Yeah, but then people will probably start thinking you're stealing it so you can find it.
Fine, prove it.
I don't think these. I don't think they need to prove anything. They just put tires on people's heads and light them up. So,
Oh.
all right. What's next? We also, the U.S. is dark now.
Yeah. The alien immediately burrowed underground, so Shelby assumes it traveled underground, whatever that means, and pushed it earthside when it found a good spot.
Yeah.
Just is it ribosome, or there are certain plants that, maybe rhododendron, send out feeders underground. And so even if you pull roots up or whatever, those little feeders are still spreading, and then they come up from underground. That would be a cool fungal network situation. The whole underside of the earth,
Yeah.
earth meaning the dirt, is this fungus.
Yeah. And so and Peggy points out that the biodome doesn't even seem to want to communicate, and that definitely seems true. I think my guess is that Melara is something that is within the biodome.
Right, especially the last description of her.
The whole thing about like the servers and her as like a robot butterfly thing.
Uh-huh.
If it's a fungus, why does it have servers, right? Like that is strange to me as well. I don't know what to think about all that.
Maybe servers is just the language that Kara would understand, but the way that fungus works, again, with those, little outreaching connecting points, that works like a server. Right. It's just we know what a server is, and we don't really know about.
Well, so if we're gonna do that and say that people kind of project and see things sort of like in their own, in the language that they understand. I wonder if Melara couldn't be something like on a molecular level, and the servers could be like mitochondria or something like that.
Yeah,
that'd be kind of interesting.
I totally thought that Melara would be some other, not a human.
Yeah,
because she doesn't have any concept of what she looks like, and
and
also the whole mating situation they had. It kind of like a symbiotic type thing. He has these. He clearly is having a response to this fungus on his skin, and that's what makes him a sensitive. So the fungus is helping him. He's helping the greater species. Everything is symbiotic, right? And so that's what I kind of saw that as. It was the joining of the two worlds.
So, we're also kind of introduced almost halfway through this reading, maybe a little later, to what like the mystery is. And the mystery is all these sensitives are dying, and like he's kind of the last one that S45 or whatever has.
Yeah.
Do we think Melara is involved in that?
Oh, interesting.
I kind of assume that she is, right? Because there's this whole they started seeing things, and their powers got kind of weird before they died, or some of them just got cut off, is what it sounds like, maybe. And could Melara be the thing that is causing that? That might be
interesting. And if Melara is part of the biodome, and the biodome is wanting something from the people, if those other sensitives weren't embracing Melara in the intended way, cut them off.
Yeah.
They're not producing that symbiotic relationship that we need.
Yeah. The whole government thing that he has is really just the Nigerian government piggybacking off of whatever the biodome is doing, right? We have no indication that any of the people he's investigating are related to the biodome. They're related to Boko Haram and random terror cells.
What's that one memory that we got though, where someone's wife got killed?
Oh, that was weird. I'm not really sure what to think about that, because so that wasn't in a chapter,
right? Oh, that was the interlude.
It was a mission interlude or something like that. And it was almost like the story of the prostitute that we got at the very, very end, right? Where it was just kind of here's this thing that has happened to him. And I'm not sure that those are important.
It got its own chapter.
Well, yeah, but I'm not sure they're important to the story. I think they're important to Tade Thompson, because I think that he's kind of playing around with this, going into people's minds and doing things, and what happens when you have lived someone else's life. If anybody's watching Wheel of Time, there is a scene in the current season 2, where a character goes somewhere and lives a whole life in the course of 5 minutes or something, and like it really traumatizes her. And the same thing happens here with Caro, where he lives through this murder of somebody he's never met, and it really. It's important to the story because it helps get him to where he is. He's such like a crotchety old man by the time that we've met him, right? Like he's not fun. But between that and this prostitute thing and all these other things,
it's just building the like what his life has been like.
I mean, it's nothing like anything that we have ever experienced. And he's walking around with everybody else, looks the same as everybody else. The people who could understand sort of what he's been through aren't really there anymore.
How did he not notice their presence was waning?
Yeah, I don't know. That's interesting. Because he, that story from his childhood where he goes to like the random funeral. He's able to sense them all. I mean, I think he doesn't want to sense, right? He spends a lot of time trying to cut himself off.
Yeah. But then when it's forcibly blocked out, he's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
He likes a medium connection. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, Shelby says the mystery was introduced very nonchalantly.
Yeah.
And I agree. I only caught that was like the issue because I read a little brief plot summary right before the show, and I was like, oh,
yeah,
we're going to be investigating why these people are disappearing. Yeah, I didn't even realize it.
Well, but I think it's unimportant to Caro, right? Again, we're experiencing all of this like from his perspective. Somebody mentioned this to him. And he is not in any way upset about it. Nothing upsets this guy, right? Let's talk about the chained up kid. He, like, if Nicole was like, hey, do you want to come meet my parents? And I was like, yeah, sure, I'll go meet your parents. And then I walked in and there was a kid chained up. I'd been like, I'm going to call the police.
And meanwhile, he's like, it's not my business.
Yeah.
And we didn't meet her parents.
Like, this dude is on too much Xanax. They need to lower the dose a bit. He doesn't care about anything, right? Did we not meet the parents at all? Yeah, I guess we did. We might have met her father. I can't remember. It doesn't matter.
We met the gardener.
Yeah. Well, the gardener met him. How about that? So, that part was all really strange, but and I don't know how often it is. And he actually says this, so it is a little more common. He says it's not that uncommon here for people to have kids that are mentally handicapped or whatever, and so they just like chain them up. And I mean, that happens here too, though. Every couple of years you find out that somebody's had their kid chained up in the backyard because, some mental deficiency or something. But her explanation for why they have the kid chained up is so that he won't fly away. What if he's Malara?
Why did she word it like that?
Yeah. Interesting. But yeah, I think she meant it literally. But like, and Caro doesn't like ask any questions about that. He's just like, okay.
And then Femi is trying to spout out these warnings about her parents and the boy and the girlfriend. Yeah. And, he's feeling alive having his little girlfriend right now. And Bola recommends this girl. She was married to her brother.
Yeah. Caro seems burned out. He doesn't care anymore necessarily like what happens to him. He doesn't want to have a good job. He's just like here for a good time because he doesn't seem convinced that it's going to be all that long. Like, why bother looking into this? Why bother? He's not trying at anything,
I got very distracted putting some pieces together.
Okay, good.
So Bola's husband was the girlfriend's other brother. One is chained up, and the other one, all we know, had a bloody spot outside a hotel room.
Yes.
I wonder if there's anything there.
There might be.
Was it just a random murder?
No, there definitely might be. I mean, like, the fact that they've mentioned that Amanat's family is somebody that should not be trusted, it will come back around. I don't know why. Their house is weird. And like, the house itself, plus the chained-up kid or whatever. If they're somehow involved in whatever Utopia City is, I would not be terribly shocked. I don't know.
Yeah. We also, another piece of the story that we got pretty quickly, and I had almost forgotten about it. What do they call it? Bicycle Girl.
Tell me about it.
She's like this underground
rebel,
and she's building a city.
Yeah.
And he got this card Like, do you want to come to this?
I wasn't that though in
Invisible
like the old
City?
part, and it was
That was when he was living with some other sensitives, the ones who rescued
right.
him from getting murdered.
I thought that was implying come to Rosewater because he wasn't like at Rosewater when that stuff was happening.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
So do we think that
I
that's
think that's why he was there when the biodome happens. You know,
he was led there by Bicycle Girl?
and maybe Bicycle Girl is Malara, right? Like they're in my mind, there's connections between a
Ah.
bicycle and a butterfly, right? Like in my mind, like they could be mental representations of the same thing.
Okay.
I just think I don't know.
I get it.
Yeah. But I think that's what got him to where Rosewater would eventually be for him to be there for the biodome originally. Because these people started manifesting these powers before Rosewater, before the biodome was ever there.
The
The
sensitives?
yeah. That is pre-biodome. I'm pretty sure.
But the teacher made it very clear that they have that ability because of the aliens.
Correct. By that point,
So I mean, the
yes.
2012 might have sparked the ability for these kids to be sensitive.
Yep. But I mean, he was doing stuff way before he got involved with the military, sensitive stuff.
Right.
And I'm pretty sure that was pre-biodome. It
Right.
may not have been pre-2012.
It wasn't pre-alien, but it was
Correct.
pre Rosewater.
Yeah, I'm not sure about all that, but
It's pre Rosewater.
I think that is correct.
That makes sense. Peggy, what part are you talking about that when he said I've seen it before? What and when? Is that the Bicycle Girl? That he mentioned
Or
that?
maybe about Malara, but he also might have just like said that, like about something. We're not sure what that was in reference to.
Okay.
But and I think that's what Shelby is saying.
Okay. That's Peggy.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. But he's very clearly clued into something that we're not.
Yeah, we know he's not 50 yet. And that'd be 54 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. Shelby says I'm cautious of the brother. The open concept of the house reassured me there isn't an elaborate network of walls he's creeping around in.
Yeah, for sure.
We'll never be the same after that book.
Oh, you said he's seen the chain before. Yeah.
Oh,
interesting.
yeah.
So that could have just been like
in other houses, he's
houses,
seen kids chained up.
Yeah. I mean, that just really didn't shock him. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he's like so dead most of the time, and then he'll do these things where he'll smash a soldier's cell phone and tell him like, "I'm a secret agent. Get out of here." And he just like messes with people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's bizarre.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Well, and the chain thing also, maybe he's seen it before because he has seen inside of so many people's minds.
Maybe.
You know, he just has a very broad view of the world,
Yeah.
or the world he lives in,
Mm-hmm.
because of the work he does getting into people's minds. He sees the worst of the worst of the worst all the time.
Yeah. You know, one other thing I'm really interested about it, and while I've been reading this, I've just been thinking so much about science fiction and how, like, really one of the core themes of science fiction is colonialism, right? Like, it is going out to other planets and making it yours and doing all that. And I've been excited about reading this because I want to see sort of that theme explored from like a Nigerian perspective, from a country that has been colonized.
Mm-hmm. And recently.
Yeah, and the colonization of Nigeria was actually kind of weird. Like it happened rather late-ish in the history of colonialism, and it happened for weird reasons. And so it would be interesting to explore, like, what if a spaceship full of Nigerian people went to some other planet and then had to like cope with, hey, we're doing this sort of thing now. And that's not what we're getting here. But what we are getting here is this biodome that is like in some way taking over, right? Like it is changing their world and their society and their country to its own purposes that we don't necessarily understand. It is improving life in some way, but like not really. Like it is, but it's also costing people something, and it's making these reanimates or whatever. Anyway, and my point just being like, it's almost like the biodome is just redoing history right? in a way. Yeah, that was all.
Yeah. Yeah, Nigeria was under colonization until the 1960s.
Yeah. what also didn't happen until like the 1880s.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about that date. And part of why it happened was to ban slavery. How weird. How weird. How
It
weird.
was wild.
Yeah.
And it the whole, I mean, just side note, I mean, if you haven't looked into it, it's all very crazy. Like, you know, that colonization disrupted the government that was there, and then as that colonization was leaving, you know, or dissolving, then you had a split of two worlds. You had those who wanted to go back to how Nigeria was before,
Right.
and then you had those who wanted to continue this kind of government moving forward.
Right.
And then you had the conflict created from that.
Yeah.
And it's, I mean, one of the bloodiest wars that our planet has seen was like the Biafran resistance, and it was mostly children who died from that. I mean, it's just terrible, from starvation.
Well, and it's also one of those places where like Europeans showed up and drew a bunch of lines, and there's like all kinds of different people that live there that aren't the same thing, right? Like they're all different, and you know, how bizarre. Shelby says it was 1884, which is
Nice.
about what I thought.
Thank you, Shelby.
But yeah, but I mean, so that is significantly after the British had outlawed slavery, and so a lot of times we think about Europeans in Africa, and we think, you know, for slavery reasons, which is true. There was obviously a lot of that.
Yeah.
But like they showed up and were doing something else, and just like kept going, until like the 1960s. And it wasn't really until after World War II where a lot of these colonies started getting like, you know, given up or whatever. And then you have this weirdness where Nigeria is, you know, I'm going to call it like English Africa, and then right above that you have French, and there's all kinds of weirdness there, even, you know, to this day. And that's not the only part of the world that has weirdness, because Europeans chopped it up. But
I mean, it's just still so fresh.
Yeah,
you know, it's just like a place that time can't heal, and it's very, very tragic. Because there's lots of beautiful things there. Chimamanda Adichie is an author who works really hard to kind of show the world that, like, if you build libraries and you provide books, people will read, and if they read, they will write. Like, there is a rich culture that can come from all of this, and it's just kind of hard to get it off the ground. Peggy, who lived in Nigeria for a bit, sorry to bust that out if you didn't want that information out there, but here we go. She said if Nigerians went to another planet, they'd still make everyone write everything down because they have a distrust of the digital. No way they'd have a Dr. Kern situation.
Well, and they mentioned that several times, right? Like they all have their money under the pillows, and you know, all kinds of stuff, and that's fine, you know.
I mean, because they've seen everything collapse. You can't trust the government. You can't trust the system. You can't, you know, all you can trust is yourself.
Yeah. But anyway, like I didn't want to like take it all the way down that road, but I do see this sort of thing here where I mean, essentially, you know, these people had their own country for less than 100 years between the British leaving and then the Utopia City showing up. You know, that's really not all that long. One other thing that I really enjoy about this book is, you know, it's really not that far into the future, and they didn't turn this into some like literal Utopia City and everything is cool in space age. You know, people are like still burning tires. Like it's very it's very dark. It's very brutal. It's a hard place. There is beauty there, but there is also still this like underbelly that like hasn't been solved in 60 years, because that's not really how that works.
Right. You know? The fact that this is not far in the future, like this is just like it's just right there. Like it scares me, right? Yeah. Yeah. Let's see. Oh, a couple of things that stood out to me. Things that we still haven't gotten rid of in the near future. Mosquitoes.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's a lot of talk of just like typical problems, right? They talk about malaria, they talk about HIV. You know, they talk about problems that are problems now that have not been solved by this point 40 years in the future. And I'm one of those people who I like my sci-fi hopeful, and I like to think like, you know, we will have made these things and done all of this. But that's interesting, right? And that kind of goes to the sort of like cyberpunk-esque feel of what's going on here, where oftentimes, like Blade Runner, right? Blade Runner is an interesting sci-fi that is in the future. They have flying cars and stuff, but it's still grungy, and it's still very similar. We would be able to live there, no problem, you know.
I want a future where there's no mosquitoes, and so does Peggy.
Fair
She's
enough.
kind of allergic to them.
um, one of the other things I think is really cool is his little job at the bank where they fill the xenosphere with like nonsense.
Yeah.
And that's really interesting, creating static to drown out the ability and hide the
Mm-hmm.
ability. And then you see that again with this guy who's like tried to train himself so that he can't be investigated by sensitives.
Oh,
But he
yeah.
was just like watching TV, and once you like figure it out, and the pieces click, then you can see the scene
Yeah.
from where it's supposed to be. That was really cool.
I thought it was interesting, when he went back to his bank job and they were reading Ayn Rand, and he had such a negative reaction to Ayn Rand. He's
Yeah,
like, I hate
yeah,
Ayn Rand.
that's
And I
interesting.
thought about that for a minute. And, if you think about Anthem,
Mm-hmm.
the whole thing is about ego, it's about self, it's about the individual above all.
Yeah,
And with him being a sensitive, even though he kind of doesn't attach himself to the other sensitives anymore and he doesn't feel their presence anymore, he is so connected into the
yeah,
xenosphere. He is part of the Borg, part of the we.
yeah, yeah.
There's not a lot of I individuality. We see him fighting against that a little bit, like he wants to take a break and he wants to take
Mm-hmm.
leave and he wants to go be with his girlfriend. But that's just been this one incident.
Right.
Other than that, he's pretty much just been doing the
Yeah,
xenosphere stuff,
yeah,
He is connected. He is not an individual.
yeah.
We're gonna have a Borg situation here. Peggy's triggered by the mosquitoes.
Well,
Shelby says she would be really annoyed if she didn't get to pick what she was reading to flood the
oh yeah,
xenosphere.
yeah. That's funny.
Okay, they're just carrying on in the chat. I
Well,
love it.
the Ayn Rand is also interesting because Ayn Rand is like, it's rather exploitative, right? Like you as the intellectual can go and use everybody to get to where you want to go, right? It's
Yeah.
very selfish philosophy, which is fine. Like whatever. Do you think?
But just considering what she came from,
Yeah.
it makes sense,
Sure.
right? Because destroying that individuality and that selfishness destroyed her society.
Yeah. I'm not a fan either of Ayn Rand, but that's okay.
I get it.
Yeah.
I
get it.
I get where
I
she's
get it.
coming from. She is extreme because she came from an extreme background.
I think it's fetishized. I think Ayn Rand is fetishized, and people take what she's written, which is like hypothetical,
Right.
mental, and it's like when people take like the Ubermensch idea and they decide they're going to go do something
Too
with
far
it.
with it. Yeah.
Maybe you don't. Maybe you take that idea and you mix it with something a little more mellow.
Yeah. Yeah. But again, it's extreme because they had some extreme circumstances. Oh, so Nietzsche wasn't okay. Poor little bud.
And I like him. He wasn't okay.
Yeah.
and you should not follow anything that he says on its own because he wasn't okay.
He wasn't okay.
Let's talk about this prostitute thing at the end.
Okay.
What is happening here? That was so bizarre. And granted that was literally the last chapter I think that we read, and so I'm not sure. Maybe we explore that a little bit more, but
Yeah.
like that seems to be part of what kills Karo's soul. Is like again he like lived somebody else's life. This is like the second time
Yeah.
that this is
Do
happening.
you think somebody did that to her?
Maybe. I don't know that there would have been any sensitives around that could have done that to her, right? I mean, like,
Right.
no. I
Why
don't
did
think so.
she feel the need to do that?
The whole thing was strange. I really don't understand that.
And then
scene.
the guy wants Karo to work for him. And does he now? That was in the past. Does he work for him now?
Yeah, so that was the guy who becomes his like manager or whatever. The man.
Oh.
Yeah. So that's kind of why we get that
Ah.
story. So the reason that we get that story is because it is how he meets this guy that he works with for all these years up until the point where we come back in to the beginning of this story.
So does he work for this guy until he works for S45?
No, he works for them all at the same time.
Okay.
I think.
Because at some point he tells this guy, like, I'm moving on.
Correct.
Keep what I made from the last job.
Yes.
But why?
I don't remember exactly why. Off the
There's
top of
too
my head.
many stories.
Yeah, but that's why that story happened. But still, the thing it's very strange, and maybe Karo just doesn't even know who he is anymore.
How could you?
How could you? Yeah.
I can like watch Friends too much and start becoming too much like Phoebe or Rachel, or I can be around a friend a lot and
Yeah.
pick up on some of their little quirks and habits and
Oh yeah.
ticks.
What happened if you are that person?
If you are in,
Yeah.
in their heads and receiving their entire lives, you are a changed person. You are still part of yourself, but you're also part of someone else. There's no way you can separate that.
Right. Yeah. And maybe that's where we're being drawn to, right? Like with this idea of a fungus, with the idea that like they're essentially all part of the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
It is a network rather than an individual. Maybe that's kind of where we're being drawn to, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what if in some way all these sensitives are now gone, but they are all in Caro, right? Like they are he has become this culmination of them in
Poor
some way.
Caro.
Yeah. I don't know.
So let's see. I saw something, and Peggy said that she would be screaming into people's heads. She would just be a little chaos agent. Shelby asked a question, and I'm also curious about this. Is there a difference between Utopicity and the Alien Dome?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think that
Is Utopicity Rosewater?
no, Utopia City is the dome. I think people think because there's this healing that comes out in these magical properties. I think people believe that we have indication that there are people in there, right? We also are led to believe that Caro is the only person who has ever left. Very early in the book, it says that he left Utopia City.
Mm.
Right? That's clearly not Rosewater because they can drive away from Rosewater and go to Lagos and do whatever, right? Rosewater is not Utopia City. The Biodome seems to be Utopia City.
This is one of those books where I'm gonna have to go back and reread the beginning to
For
understand what happened.
But we're led to believe that he was in there, that he left somehow. And so because there are people in there, people are thinking that there must be this perfect world in there or something. You know, also, you know, Caro left that. What if Caro's not Caro? We have somebody.
What if he's essentially a reanimate of Caro?
I mean, on some level, right? If he really spent time in Utopia City and we don't know anything about it, these memories and things that he had. Number one, these memories that he has of his childhood may not be his own, because he has memories of killing a woman that was his wife that was not his. He now has all these prostitute memories that he never lived. It's entirely possible that these other memories that we see of his are not his.
Oh my gosh.
And you know, what if the body of Caro was taken into Utopia City and it is now something else entirely?
I was really like, wow, we have a narrator we can trust because he sees everything and we see it all too.
I don't know, man.
Yeah, we can't trust the narrator.
Yeah. I don't know. I really don't have all. I'm ready for the second week because I'm hoping that we'll get a little more stuff. Another storyline that has kind of been thrown at us is that an American has washed up on the shore.
Oh yeah.
And and he says he was in America last week, and nobody's heard from America in like 20 years. So there's definitely a lot of storylines going on, right? Like it's a very complicated story, but I'm really enjoying it. I'm liking the complexity.
Yeah.
After like a simple, straightforward whodunit, which was after like a romance novel, or I don't remember what was in between, but I'm here for it.
You know, as we go through this book, we'll need some input as to whether we want to roll straight into the rest of the trilogy. Like, do we just want to do it?
Yeah. Y'all please be thinking about it. And there's no reason for us to make up our minds after this first week.
No. I'm just saying, like...
Yeah, but we need to be thinking about, do we continue on with the second book now? I mean, because we're only talking about reading, if we did all the stuff, we'd only be reading until about Christmas, which is fine. That's right around the corner.
Yeah.
Or Thanksgiving. I skipped a month.
I didn't even bother checking your math.
Yeah. You okay?
Yeah, my leg fell asleep.
So,
losing circulation.
Yeah. We just need to start thinking about how do we want to handle this, and we can always come back to it. This might be a difficult story to walk away from, and then come back to.
Because we'd be wondering what happened.
Yeah.
Couple other things that just random. I'm just in the random zone now. When we were getting the stories about, when they were in school and they were learning about the early folks that pretended to be sensitives and like, have you heard of ectoplasm and whatever?
Yeah.
And I was like, Ghostbusters, right?
Yeah.
Like there was ectoplasm in Ghostbusters, wasn't there?
Yeah.
Anyway, it made me laugh. And then
Well, and so part of that though is that now that the sensitives are around, or what, they have a video of one of the early actual sensitives where she does vomit something.
oh yeah, and it was like ghost-like.
And I think what we were supposed to be believing is that it was spores. I'm not sure about that,
Oh,
but I think we're
that makes
supposed to think that
sense.
it's fungal spores.
That makes sense.
So, yeah. What's your next one?
Oh, my next one, Bola seeing her husband in her dreams. You know, that is very. We do see people that we lost in our dreams.
Yeah.
That happens. But then he said, "Are you sure he's not really a ghost?"
Yeah, because ghosts can
And
happen
he
in the
keeps
xenosphere.
saying, "I'm lost and I need help finding my way out."
Yeah.
That boy's lost in the xenosphere. He's up in the biodome or something.
Yeah. Well, somehow, I mean, like in this world, yeah, his information has been retained. You know.
But if it's just your information that's been retained, your information ain't gonna be saying like, "Knock, knock, knock, get me out of here."
Well, but it doesn't understand that it's the information, right?
So it would just be pure information. It wouldn't have character. It wouldn't
No,
have.
but like it is a copy of himself that exists digitally, right?
That boy's up. He's somewhere.
Yeah, I think that makes sense, right? Like somehow there's this, I'm gonna call it digital fungal version of the husband, and he's like trapped in there and wants to get out, and he doesn't understand. Like, could you imagine if all of a sudden you were like uploaded or something and you didn't know what that meant or what you were and why this world is the way it is, and you know.
So just like in our last book that we read, you know, there was no body, so I was pretty sure the kid was still alive. Pretty sure that husband's still alive. There was no body.
Yeah. Well, yeah, he also just might have run away. You know, like didn't like what was going on and just left. I don't know. No.
Peggy says 2 things that she highlighted. One is in the subway with the reanimate, where he hits his head near a sticker for Jesus. 2, where he explains his theory on matchmaking when Bola sets him up.
That was kind of an interesting little conversation.
I don't remember that.
So in that part, he says, you know, whenever people set you up with someone, what they're doing is setting you up with someone that they think is most like yourself.
Oh.
And so whenever you go on, so Nicole and I were kind of set up.
Yeah.
Right? And so what that means is that your friends thought that I was the most like you that they could find or whatever, you know. But it was meant to be kind of insulting, because how often do people show up on these dates where they're being set up with somebody and the person's like an absolute freak, you know, or like is like a total monster or something.
Yeah.
And like, oh no, but y'all are just similar, right? Because y'all are into whatever, you know. But people match based on similarities, and that's kind of the conversation.
Yeah.
And so by who people match you with tells you a lot about how they see you.
Yeah, that is interesting. I also pointed out they mentioned a lot of yams.
Yeah.
And that was like the man crop back in the day in Nigeria.
Okay.
Men grew yams.
Interesting.
And that was like your sign of wealth.
Yeah, they had yams for breakfast.
If you had yams in the shed, that meant your family could eat. You were wealthy.
Okay.
You know, your family could survive on that. Yeah. Shelby says it's also funny when you introduce a significant other to friends and the spouse is not what they pictured.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty funny.
So am I like you?
We are very similar.
Are we?
We're very much like our dogs.
That's all I want to be.
No, we do have a lot of the same like temperaments. We're generally patient and even keeled. I don't know if we were like that before we mind melted. Yeah.
All right. Let's see what else. If you were going to be in the network, you know, he made himself a griffin. What would you be?
Yeah, that's interesting. I thought about that a little bit. I don't know. I do think I would do something not human. There's this conversation of the girl who made herself like a memory or something.
Oh,
that
her
was really
earliest blob
Yeah.
memory. Yeah.
That was really cool.
Smart. I wonder if she survived.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I would be that, but like the griffin is kind of cool. Maybe like a hydra of some kind. I don't know, just something scary, right? To like move people away from you.
I'd probably be a Boston Terrier.
That's what's up.
Just hyper, twitchy, running around and chasing stuff. You know.
I don't know. I really don't know what it would be. I don't think I get to pick. I think other people should pick for you. What would I be? You have 3 seconds. 1,
Elephant.
2. I don't want to play anymore.
Don't make me quick pick. Okay? Don't make me quick pick. Cassava too. Main crop.
Gotcha.
Yeah. It's still the crop, says Peggy. Quite a learning experience. They taste like nothing. Yeah, they're different. They're not what we call yams.
But we have like sugar yams. Yeah.
It's just that when like people brought from Africa were here in America, that was the closest thing to a yam that they could like that visually looked like a yam, and so they called it that.
Gotcha.
You know, because it was a similar, word, and then we just took that word, and then it's not at all like what the yams are.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Right. Well, look, we've been talking for about an hour. It's time for us to go read, and I'm hungry.
I'm hungry too, but hold on, I need to make sure.
I know I'm missing stuff because there was
just a lot. Yeah, I might reread parts of this first part of the reading.
I reskimmed this morning.
Just see what
just to make sure that,
because there's so many disconnected stories that we can't attach them to anything yet because we don't know.
Well, and there's so many things that are just subtle because Caro doesn't emphasize them.
Yeah,
and it's tough.
All right, well.
One more thing, the boy that's chained up in the house that they're worried about that he will fly. From this storyline, I'm getting very Anansi Boys vibes. Like a very similar kind of feeling.
He'll fly away.
Yeah. Well, and like how different is the Xenosphere really from sort of the other world with the caves?
Right.
You know, where Anansi was hiding and Tiger lived and all that kind of stuff.
Not different.
Yeah, it's really all very similar. And that's actually kind of interesting. I don't exactly remember what part of the world Anansi came from. Was it Kenya? Which is like the opposite.
I thought it was like the Caribbean.
Yeah, but it was influenced by... Anyway, my point being is there's kind of some interesting similarities. Yeah. I understand that I don't think it was from Nigeria. I really feel like it's from the other side of Africa. But there might be some interesting concepts, and I would like to see what some traditional Nigerian folklore is like. And is there sort of a Xenosphere in their mythology? You know, that'd be kind of interesting.
Chinua Achebe has written tons of novels, and some of those have some of the like kind of traditional stories that are told to the children and stuff there, and some are about the mosquitoes whispering in your ear, and one's about a turtle that went into the sky to eat, and then he couldn't stay up there anymore, so he fell, and that's how he has cracked shell.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
That wasn't helpful to your comment, but just a quick fun fact.
I like him. He's a good author.
Oh my gosh, he's amazing. His poetry is just tugs at the heart.
So last comment. Peggy says if her parents already think that the house girl is a witch, then they might think a sensitive child is a witch, keeping him locked up. Yeah, it's entirely possible.
Oh, I forgot about that, Peggy.
Yeah, definitely possible.
Good job.
And and that child is obsessed with the Xenosphere, right? Like he knows enough about it to see Caro and recognize his face from some like handheld recorder situation, you know?
Yeah.
So.
From a 2012 cell phone.
Yeah.
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 What phone did you have in 2012?
I probably had an iPhone by then. I think. So.
All right. Well, let's go read.
That was fun. Thank you all for being here. There was so much going on. I appreciate you putting up with all of our tangents. I feel like that episode was a little bit more of a mess than some of our other ones, but this book is a bit more of a mess.
Felt fine to me. I learned a lot today.
I feel like this conversation was very in keeping of the spirit of the way that this first section went.
It kind of helped me put things together. Like I kind of just read and didn't make connections with what I read.
Yeah.
And so I feel like talking about it helped me make sense of some things. Sure. And as always, all the little things that I miss, y'all fill in those blanks, and I really appreciate that. Yeah. Again, why I love the book club.
Yeah.
I get so much more out of what we read. I remember it so much better.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, there's just 1,000 reasons to love the book club.
Well, thank you for coming this week. We greatly appreciate it. We will be back next Sunday at 10 a.m. with our second reading, which I think is chapters 11 through...
The interlude before 22.
It's a weird chapter that doesn't have a name. It's kind of like
or doesn't have a number.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So just stop when you hit 22.
Cool. All right. See y'all then. Bye.